Hello, my name is Robin, and I am here at the Airmen and Family Readiness Center at Shepherd Air Force Base. Today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the ABCs of civilian resume writing. The Webster's Dictionary defines resume as a short summary account of one's career or qualifications prepared by an applicant for a position. Our definition of a resume is a 60-second commercial to sell yourself and get an interview. With this information, we're going to go through the appearance, basic formats, and content of a civilian resume. When you're writing a civilian resume, you want to make sure that you keep it brief, clean, and easy to read. Typically, you want to use 3/4 to 1 inch margins throughout your resume. Using size 11 or 12 font in New Times Roman, Calibri, or Arial are acceptable. You want to limit your civilian resume to 1 page if possible, never more than 2 pages. If you do go for 2 pages, you want to make sure that you have a header at the top of each page listing your name, phone number, and email address. Up at the top of your civilian resume, you want to make sure that you put your name in bold and in a larger font. You want to include your phone number and email address underneath your larger name. Most important information should be at the top third of your resume. This is definitely the most valuable real estate and the main area that hiring managers and recruiters are going to take a look at quickly to decide if they want to read any more. You can use paragraphs or bullet statements in your resumes. Typically, bullet statements are going to be a little bit easier to read and pull out key facts from. Make sure that you proofread and have others proofread for grammar and spelling errors. If you think it looks great, sleep on it. The next day, go ahead and take another look at it and see if anything freshly comes before you of an error. If you're sending your resume via email to a hiring manager or uploading it to a company, make sure that you send it in a PDF format so that your formatting is locked in place. Let's look at some different basic formats of the civilian resume. We're going to talk about the chronological, functional, combination, and target resume. First, let's take a look at the chronological resume. This is definitely one of the most used resumes. Your work history is going to be in reverse order. Some of the advantages of this chronological resume is that it's easy to follow. It can provide great career progression, and in general it's preferred by employers because it's what they're used to and it's easier to read. Some of the disadvantages could be that it doesn't emphasize specific skills, or that it highlights gaps in your employment, or it could be too long depending on how long your work history is. You want to use a chronological resume when you have solid work history. Let's take a look at a functional resume. A functional resume focuses on skills and experience while putting the work history in the background. A functional resume is great for someone that has employment gaps, and it highlights transferable skills and moves relevant experience up. Some of the disadvantages of a functional resume is it can be perceived as hiding blind spots if you don't word things properly. It doesn't highlight progression, and it's not super common. You want to use this functional resume style when you have limited work experience. You can also use it if you have a change of career or if you change jobs frequently. A combination resume, or as some people call it, a hybrid resume, blends the elements of both types, the chronological and the functional resume. It showcases your skills and employment while emphasizing transferable skills. It can show strong career progression. Some of the disadvantages of the combination resume is it could be too long, and if it's not wrote right, it might be a little difficult to understand. And you want to use this when you want to showcase specific skills, and this works really well if you have a change in career. The last type of resume that we're going to discuss is a targeted resume. A targeted resume is personalized to a specific job announcement. The advantage of this is it's written specifically to the employer's needs. The disadvantage is that it should be revised for each employer, which means that it's very time-consuming sometimes. Other formats can be made into a target resume, pulling in those keywords and target phrases from the job announcement. You should absolutely always try to target your resume to the job posting company that you are wanting to work at. Now that we've talked about the different formats of civilian resumes, let's look at the different contents. You have the contact information, career summary, professional experience, education, credentials or certifications, and then possibly an extra section. Let's look at the contact information. As we started off with, you in general want to have your name in a larger, bold font. Industry standard says that it's no longer necessary to list your address on your contact information. You want to make sure that your email address does not show that you are outdated. In general, right now, Gmail or Outlook are going to be the more up-to-date email addresses. So if you have like an AOL or something like that from a while back, definitely recommend that you create a new Gmail. You can add your LinkedIn URL to this area, this contact information area, but I encourage you to only do this if your LinkedIn profile is complete and something that you are comfortable with professionally representing you. It's most common to use your full name, while it is becoming more acceptable to use the name which you prefer to be called. You want the hiring manager to be comfortable pronouncing your name. The next section typically is the career summary. This can be called a couple different things, and you may have seen many years back this was listed as the objective. The career summary can be a more powerful introduction versus objective. An objective sometimes can be too vague. A career summary is much like a newspaper headline. It's a brief overview that emphasizes career highlights that relate to the desired job, as well as identifying your qualifications. And you can do the career statement either in a bullet statement or a brief 4 to 5 or 3 to 4 line summary. A career summary should point out a few key things. Typically it's going to be the number of years experience in the field, any education, training, or certifications that are very important to have in that field. If you have an accomplishment that just says it all, really just sums up why you are good for this position. Any of your key skills, talents, or special knowledge related to the target job. And if you can, try and include something unique about your personal work style that would look appealing to the employer. Here's two examples of the career summary formats done as a headline and a paragraph. The next section is going to be your professional experience. There are a couple different titles that you could have for this section. Typically, you're going to see experience or professional experience. For your professional experience, you want to make sure when you're writing these statements that you use the CAR format. This stands for challenge, action, and result. You want to make sure that you use strong action verbs when starting your statement. In general, you don't want to have responsible for or assisted or helped. You want to make sure that you have done some research and know what are key words for the industry that you're applying for. You want to make sure that you're speaking in first person. And something to look at is to make sure that you're using present tense for current jobs and past tense for previous jobs. So if you're updating a resume from a previous job that you had applied to, make sure that you change all of the tenses around so that they match for each position. This section may take the longest to write, and it really can depend on how many factors, it could really depend on many factors where to place this in your resume. Let's take a look at an example of a paragraph format for the professional experience section. You can see here that they have just listed in a straight paragraph format. Something that I ask you to consider is if the hiring manager is just going to glance through this, what is the likelihood that they're going to read the next to last and last sentence of this? The advantages could be that it requires the least amount of space, but the disadvantages is your achievements can really get lost, and it doesn't draw the reader's attention to what you're trying to say about your duties or accomplishments. The idea is to use what best sells you. This is an example of bulleted format for the professional experience section with the same information that was just shown in the paragraph format. In general, this is just much easier to follow along with. It's much easier to scan as the hiring manager. One thing to consider is when you're doing your bullets, make sure that you rack and stack them. Think about if the hiring manager is only going to spend a couple seconds glancing, make sure that you have your 1, 2, 3 ranked bullets up at the top. Advantages of bulleting is obviously to have quick and easy access to the information. Let's look at another example here, or another option for the professional experience section. And this is going to be combination. With this, you see a small paragraph with the customer's duties, and then that is followed up with a couple bullets of their accomplishments. The responsibilities are clearly presented in this, and it definitely highlights the achievements. Let's take a little bit of a deeper look into that CAR formula, challenge, action, result. You want to make sure that you're setting yourself apart from the competition. Going into the next section is going to be the education and training section. For the education section, you want to make sure that you list the highest degree first, the institution name and location, possibly the graduation date, and possibly the GPA. I say possibly because if you obtained your bachelor's degree in 20 or 30 years ago, it might be best for you to leave off that graduation date as to not give any indications to what your age may be. As far as your GPA, if you have multiple degrees and all of your degrees you have your GPA higher than 3.5, it's a great idea to list them. If anything higher than 3.5, definitely suggest that you list your GPA. Listing your high school diploma information, typically you don't need to list that. Sometimes you may want to if, for example, you're a transitioning service member who is moving back to their hometown where they graduated high school from. That could be good to show those hometown roots. And if you just recently are doing either a career change or you just obtained or obtaining a new degree, it could be very beneficial below your education information to list a relevant coursework section. If you have any relevant training, you want to make sure that you list that. And you want to make sure that you civilianize it to not have that military jargon that civilian employers are going to understand. If you recently graduated from college and don't have solid work history yet in the industry of which you just graduated, it's probably going to be beneficial for you to put your education section under your career summary. That's really highlighting in that top third valuable real estate section to the hiring manager that, hey, I just recently graduated, here's a relevant coursework section, highlighting that you just got that new higher education degree. Here's some examples of how you can list your education and training. Often you'll have an education training section followed by a licenses and certification section. It's just really going to depend on the industry that you're going into what to do for this. There's an optional extras section. This is the section where you should include things that will distinguish you from other candidates and clearly demonstrate your value to a prospective employer. You want to make sure when you're listing any of these things that you take a step back and you think about, is this relevant to this hiring manager for this job? Sometimes we have some, amazing experiences that we have done through volunteerism or different clubs that we've been a part of. But if it doesn't add any value to this job you're applying to, really take a look at if you should remove that and use that space with something very relevant to that position. Let's take a look at just some English language and grammar tips of how you can make statements on your resume. The thing about resumes are they are very subjective. So these are definitely just some basic tips for you when you're creating your civilian resume. Let's talk about references a little bit. The industry standard now is that you do not put references on your civilian resume. That includes the statement you often see, references available upon request. It's a given that if the employer asks for references that you will provide them. So you want to make sure that you have a reference sheet ready to go if you're asked to provide it. You want to make sure that you do not use family members when providing references. Typically, you want to use past supervisors, coworkers, professors. If you need to use personal because you don't have professional yet, that is okay, but typically you want to stick to professional references. You want to make sure that you always talk to your references, keep them updated about what your employment journey is. You don't want to, 5 years after you last talked and had any communication with your reference, put them down, and then that potential employer contacts them and they have kind of a blank, confused moment trying to figure out what this phone call is about. So if you just stay in contact with your references, it's very considerate to send them an updated copy of your resume, possibly even the job announcement that you're applying for. So that way when they're contacted by your potential employer, they are fully prepared and anticipating that contact. When you're creating this reference sheet, you have an opportunity to make a little bit of continuity with your branding, and whatever font and size that you have for that first contact information section on your resume, have that mirror over onto your reference sheet so that it appears in the same format. If you have a reference that you know is going to be very difficult to get a hold of, it is acceptable for you to get a letter of reference from them to provide to your potential employer instead. You definitely always want to make sure that you thank your references for their time. It's so important to use strong action verbs. We have additional resources here at the Airmen and Family Readiness Center to give you plenty of ideas. So definitely encourage you to let us know if you would like any of that. Let's go over a recap of some resume do's. When you're listing your achievements, you want to quantify them as much as possible. Definitely want to bring in dollar figures, percents of things that you have made better or improved upon. Make sure you're using those key words from the job announcement. We talked about already having your civilian resume be 1 to 2 pages max, and if you do that 2 pages, make sure that you are putting a header on each page so that if the hiring manager prints them out and misplaces a page, they know exactly where it belongs. And make sure that you are taking some time to stand out, be unique, set yourself apart. Get that hiring manager excited about finding out more about you. You always want to make sure that you meet the job announcement requirements. And very important, proofread, and then have someone else you trust proofread, and then proofread it again. Let's talk about some things beyond the resume. We've got researching the company, cover letters, thank you notes, and networking that we're going to talk about. Company research. Company research is really important. You want to make sure that you are aware of what the company's mission statement and core values are. What's the company's culture? And there's many opportunities of where you can find this information. One of my favorite is absolutely LinkedIn. LinkedIn is a wonderful professional platform that allows you to dive into the company, what they stand for, things that are important to them that they're posting about. You're able to search different employees and look at their LinkedIn profiles, and you can in general get a good idea of what the culture is like at the company. Cover letters. Cover letters are very important to include with your resumes. Cover letters give you an opportunity to highlight your abilities as well as displaying company knowledge. And you definitely have a great opportunity in personalizing with your cover letter. It's essentially your sales pitch. Some tips for cover letters. In the introduction, you want to keep it brief. If you want to do everything in your power to figure out a name to address it to. You want to try to not address it to whom it may concern, if you can find a name, or the hiring manager of the company. In the body, you want to summarize qualifications, include numbers and specific results. You can use paragraphs or bullets or a little combination of both. In closing, you want to establish the expectations for the next step. And this is the time to be, in a polite way, be assertive. And then indicate a follow-up. Some cover letter tips is you want to make sure that you're not just repeating your resume. You want to keep your cover letter to one page. Address a person, not a title. Personalize it to each letter. Proofread that also just as much as you proofread your resume. And then sign that cover letter in blue or black ink so that they know that is a specific cover letter signed by you, not just a copy you printed out. And print a copy of that cover letter for yourself so that you remember exactly what you stated when you turned that in. So 4 approaches for a cover letter. We're going to talk about a traditional cover letter. This is where you briefly state why you are writing, kind of having that interest, piquing cover letter where you start off with some impressive information to grab their attention right off the bat. Referrals are always wonderful and greatly appreciated by hiring managers. So in an appropriate way, if you have a name drop of someone that you know at that company that referred you to this hiring manager. And then who you are. It's important to communicate in every letter who you are and why you are unique and they should want to learn more about you. Thank you letters, cards are definitely the most often overlooked. Time and time again, I hear from hiring managers that they interviewed 15 people and one sent them a thank you card. It's a really awesome opportunity for you to set yourself apart from the other applicants that they interviewed. It gives you an opportunity to show your genuine interest in that company. And it reminds the hiring manager to contact you. We recommend that you send a thank you letter or card after every interview. You want to be brief and you want to send it within 24 hours. Handwritten is definitely the best way to go, and the most unique for you to take the time to do that. You can send an email as a last resort. Networking and marketing, such an important topic here. Networking will open doors that you have no idea, right? And you will be marketing yourself at the same time while you're networking. LinkedIn is a great platform for networking, and hiring managers are absolutely pulling information and seeking people out from LinkedIn recruiting accounts. All right, so those are some basics of civilian resume writing. Here at the Airmen and Family Readiness Center, we have an in-person civilian resume writing class that we teach each month, and we would love to have you come and attend that class. We have an employment assistance team here where we can meet with you one-on-one and help you with anything in your employment journey. Some resources for civilian resumes are going to be MySeco, that helps with they have a spouse resume builder and sample resumes on there. For our transitioning service members, Hiring Our Heroes, as well as military spouses, Hiring Our Heroes will provide you a civilian resume free of charge. And then another resource is USA Jobs. We have a USA Jobs class as well that you are welcome to attend, and USA Jobs, of course, is going to be for your federal resume, which is very different and unique compared to the civilian resume. Thank you so much for your time, and we look forward to hearing from you. You can reach us here at the Airmen and Family Readiness Center at 940-676-4358. Thank you.